Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Josh Oram, CEO of Pharos. We'll be discussing Pharos' new strategy around PrintOps, its long heritage in the print management sector, and how it's looking to accelerate its lead in the enterprise space. So really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Josh.
Thank you so much. Happy to finally be doing this. I know we've talked about it for a little while.
Absolutely. And it's really good timing because, as I mentioned, we've got plenty to discuss around this PrintOps approach that you've created. But before we dive into that conversation, could you tell us a bit about your background? I know you've been a CEO for about a year now, perhaps. So it's quite recent. So if you could share a bit of your career history and what brought you to Pharos.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent the last 25 years more in Silicon Valley. For a while there, I've worked at a few different startups, but then I ran a San Francisco-based product and marketing firm for about 15 years. And we really spent that time helping venture-backed B2B startups in a variety of ways. And for the last 10 years, I've been an operating partner at Spotlight Equity, a private equity firm. We invest in B2B software companies. As an operating partner, I was fortunate enough to work with a bunch of different companies, focus on a variety of things from go-to-market strategy to product development, and before electing to step into the role of CEO at Pharos. I'm super excited about Pharos. I really feel like it has a great heritage that you already alluded to, and it's been a pioneer in the print management space for about 30 years, and I think has a great future ahead of it as well. We've been around for 30 years, but I know that we haven't been out there as much, and we're working to change that. We got our start in higher education. We maintain a very large footprint with a lot of the leading educational institutions. About 20 years ago, the company moved into the commercial space by launching Blueprint, an on-prem print management solution that's still deployed at some of the world's largest organizations. Then about 10 years ago, we moved into the cloud. First, we launched it around analytics and gradually expanded that. So it's basically at feature parity with our on-prem solutions. And today, obviously, we're looking at taking that to the next level and moving into the future with new things. I'd say that large enterprises, even though we have a big footprint in education, large enterprises are really our bread and butter. And they're a little different than other use cases. Print at a very large environment is very complex. Something that takes 10 minutes per printer, for example, in a small environment is not a problem, but you take it and you put that across 500 printers, and suddenly an hour-long task takes 2 weeks. You put it across 5,000 printers, and you're looking at a year. So we really work to reduce that complexity. Another aspect is, maintaining industry-leading uptime. It's the same thing, at let's say a 500-person company. Print goes down for a little bit. Most likely not a big deal. At any given point, no one's printing. But at 5,000 employees, or 50,000 employees, or at 500,000 employees, someone is always printing, and any downtime is really, really critical. Complexity does not scale linearly. So we're working on solving some of those challenges. And really excited to talk more about that today.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear that, because I think, like you say, it's not a widely known company, but you've got that really strong heritage and legacy in the enterprise space. And I know your big focus is to accelerate that lead in the enterprise sector. And I think, as you mentioned, the traditional print management space hasn't really changed significantly over that kind of period of 30 years. And I guess this is where we can sort of learn a bit more about your new approach with PrintOps, because I think it's a really interesting way of helping the industry evolve and simplify some of those areas you mentioned and take that complexity out of print management. So yeah, could you tell us a bit about that PrintOps approach and what led to that development? Was it customer challenges, or was it something that you were seeing generally in the market?
Yeah, first, let me a quick definition of what PrintOps, and I know we'll drill into more detail on this, but we're really using it to describe the modern approach to printing infrastructure and operations. It's cloud native, people centric. And at its core, it's all about maximizing productivity, both employee productivity, IT administration productivity, and the user experience. The reason we're launching it now is, as you alluded to, print management has been around for a long time. Many print management solutions have evolved over time, and there's lots of changes in IT over the last 30 years. But some solutions are still out there that reflect sort of historical preferences. And when we looked at what we're selling today, and more importantly, how our customers are using what we sell today to drive business change, maximizing employee productivity, delivering a really great employee experience, and we compare it with some of the older stuff that's more focused around managing printers, they're really worlds apart. And so it's confusing. What is print management? And it felt that modern solutions were no longer recognizable as print management and needed a new category. It's like scientists tracking the evolution of a new species. You have to draw the line somewhere, and so we think we have a good definition of what it is, and then hoping for feedback from you and others as we refine this over time. In the end, I'd say our vision is more oriented around people, not printers. And print management as a category doesn't adequately capture that vision. So it's grounded in the past, and we wanted something focused on the future.
Yeah, so I think I'm aware that print Pharos really has this strong focus, or has for some time already been in the cloud space. Ahead of, I guess, some of your competitors. And now it's almost kind of reinventing that approach for the modern IT environment, which is AI-driven, cloud-driven, and so on, and a real focus on digital employee experience. And you touched on that a bit there. So, so what really distinguishes PrintOps in the print management space from traditional print management? Is it as simple as on-prem versus cloud, or is it really focused on some of those areas like you mentioned around productivity and user experience?
I mean, it's bigger than that. I think we can break it down into three core distinctions and then a few supporting things. The biggest one is user-focused versus printer-focused. Not that you can abandon printers, but historically and traditionally, the history of print management software is you deploy a bunch of printers and you need to manage them. We're focused on managing printing. And managing that for the users. And I think as we look at evolution of IT, where it's focused, the rise of the end user compute role, and now the digital experience role, and all of this is companies are more and more focused on the employee experience. Another part is dynamic versus static. And this gets to the cloud, but we all know the office is changing more rapidly than ever before. We had everybody going home, everybody coming back, all sorts of stuff. And companies need to be able to dynamically react quickly instead of slowly. It's no longer good enough to every 5 years take a look, do these nice forecasts, and slowly do this. It's happening in real time or near real time. And companies need to be able to adapt to that. And that means cloud-based. You can't do it when you can, but it's painful to do that when you're dealing with lots of networking, lots of servers, all of that stuff. The third area is connected versus siloed. And this is a really important thing. You can look at printers. The printers are often connected, let's say, to doc management systems, et cetera. But when we're talking about the system as a whole and how it's administered, it's not connected. And what we're doing is we're working to build connections into platforms that large enterprises are using to manage IT, like ITSM platforms, asset management platforms, for example. And more importantly, companies should be able to build their own connections. So connected versus siloed. And supporting those is, a few other things we're looking. I've talked about this in past blog posts, et cetera, but optimized versus periodic, like optimized constantly versus occasionally optimized, intuitive and simple versus more complex and time consuming. And it's not just about enabling employees with an intuitive interface, but also really focusing on the IT administrators who are managing the system and enabling them to do things more easily.
Yeah, so I think what you sort of mentioned, some of those areas, and I think we need to kind of clarify. PrintOps isn't a new product, is it? It's not something you're trademarking. It's really a new category that is representing the next evolution of print management.
Exactly. It's not something we're trademarking, not something we own. We see it as both a new approach to managing print infrastructure and the platforms and solutions that support that, but also, the type of solution that does enable that. We can't have a category of one, so we welcome others to use it and jump in. I think this is what companies need to be doing.
Yeah, and I think it's always, great for the industry when a new category is created because, like you say, it's an opportunity for customers then to be able to optimize their print environments. But as you mentioned, it's not just about the IT admin side, it's also very user focused. And that's generally what we're seeing with other IT tools and platforms, particularly around digital employee experience. So, I think it's a real opportunity for the industry to show, how the sector can become more dynamic and innovative. And I always feel that ISVs are the innovators in a very traditional and mature industry. So so I think it's a great opportunity overall. So we talked to those main categories that you highlighted, which really distinguish traditional print management to PrintOps. When you look at it from a technology perspective, clearly it's cloud native and user centric. What do you see these future PrintOps type platforms really being characterized by?
There are some things that are really clear and I can talk to them easily. And there's some things that I think we're going to be defining as we go along. For us, leveraging cloud native infrastructure, I would say just forklifting an on-prem tool to the cloud doesn't cut it, doesn't give you the capabilities you need. It needs to be designed from the ground up. Then the other part that's important, and we're working on this now, is exposing more of our administrative tools via an open API that give companies access to doing things from their preferred interface. Hardware agnostic, and I know I'm talking like an ISV, but that's an important thing. I think another part is dynamic and able to adapt quickly to changing needs, whether it's different user locations, adapting to different data privacy requirements based on where companies are based, what they're doing, how their employees are moving around the globe. In the future, looking at providing more workflow automations that will solve common issues or ideally address them before they occur, and that leads to I know a hot topic, which of course is leveraging data and AI to anticipate and resolve issues before they happen, and helping users out so that you can reduce the help desk burden. Some of this stuff is, I feel, table stakes, supporting widely accepted security frameworks, making sure we see a lot of zero trust requirements around, and we need to make sure that that's fully supported, and supporting a variety of print environments, offices, hybrid, remote, whatever the company needs. I think that the future platforms are really going to be this operationally focused type platform. When we look at IT, there's been the explosion of ops-oriented roles. They're IT ops or DevOps or DevSecOps or all of this stuff. And this is really how IT is aligning itself. And it makes sense that there should be operations around print now.
Yeah, it's often the forgotten part of the IT environment, or has been for so long, and it's kind of sat in its own silo with proprietary tools. And I think, as you say, it needs to be better integrated with those broader IT ops environments that companies are familiar with. And I guess because you're really focused at that enterprise space, you'll see that need for it, particularly for companies that are supporting that really distributed and dispersed work environment, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of customers with employees all over the world, and those employees are going to have varying data privacy requirements, whether it's me in the US or me in California, you in the UK, whether you're in Germany or over in Asia or wherever you are, there are varying things, and your platform needs to support that.
And in terms of, just picking up on that actually, because you mentioned about opening up the platform via public APIs, and I think that's very critical in terms of better integration with that sort of broader IT platform. But I wanted to pick up also on the AI and analytics side, because data is really the foundation for any AI platform. And can you talk a bit about how you plan to embrace AI in a typical PrintOps platform?
Before we get into that, I want to say that I firmly believe AI is going to be transformative, both for our industry, but more globally. I think that we're still scratching the surface. I feel like the use cases we're identifying today are interesting, but a little prosaic. And I'm not sure what the future holds, but it's going to be really exciting. The way that we're leveraging it is in a few different ways. One, we want to improve the end user, the employee experience, and make it easier for them. And we want to also use it to, again, enable the IT administrator and make their lives easier. And some of that is, hey, anticipating employee needs and allowing them to avoid logging help desk tickets. It's an easy one. Giving them some way to address print driver problems on their computer without going to IT. The way we're going to be supporting this is by building a data lake. As I mentioned already, when we first built Pharos Cloud, it was oriented towards analytics. So we already have a lot of this information, and we're consolidating it, which will allow us to train AI to recognize patterns. And I can give you a use case. Let's say we're able to identify a printer that, let's say a printer usually has 100 prints an hour, and suddenly it doesn't have any. We can anticipate that, hey, there's a problem. We can look at the toner, we can look at the various things and say we don't see a problem here, but obviously there's a problem there. And I could see an AI engine dynamically saying, hey, let's put a little frowny face on the printer and direct people to another nearby printer where they could do it. At the same time, we could go out to the users and dynamically update their drivers to point, and their printers, their default printer, to point somewhere else. And we could do this all proactively without getting IT involved. And we could log a ticket for IT saying, hey, there's a problem on this, all without anyone lifting a finger. It solved the problem. And I think that really advances the user experience, drives more productivity, and provides both a better user experience and a better IT experience.
Yeah, no, I think that, I totally agree. I think AI can really, like you say, it's still in a nascent stage in a sense. It's really exploded on the Gen AI side, but in terms of machine learning and applying AI at this kind of level, while OEMs have already been using it for predictive maintenance and support and ISVs as well. I think some of these capabilities where it's actually proactively improving the workflow and reducing the intervention needed by IT, which leads to better user experience and reduce IT admin costs. So it's interesting to hear that you're already leveraging that. And in terms of the customers you're working with, I'm sure you've been discussing this. I know it's a fairly new concept that you've introduced, but curious as to what your customers think and kind of feedback you've had so far.
Yeah, great feedback. We've been talking with some of our large customers. It's really resonated. Some of them, a lot of we're identifying this category based on, in many cases, what they're already doing. And so it's not a surprise to, there's a little bit of panic of, do we need to be doing something else? No, you need to be doubling down on what you're already doing. And it's really the long-term vision has resonated. We've had a number of customers raise their hands. They want to participate in our PrintOps working group I don't want to say it's happening yet, but we're looking to launch this in the near future and, really get more input both from customers, from others in the industry. What does this mean?
Yeah, and I think that's really a good opportunity to get that feedback and also see how it impacts the rest of the industry as well in terms of print management, and revives a very sort of traditional market space. And I think it really helps Pharos differentiate in that space, because what we are seeing in the print management from an analyst perspective is that it's very fragmented with lots of different vendors. And I know Pharos is very focused on the enterprise space, but I think sometimes there needs to be more clarity from a customer to really understand what's the most beneficial platform for them. And is it truly cloud native? Is it an on-prem version which is then just been scaled to the cloud rather than built from the ground up? And I know Pharos is very much about cloud native built.
We're a little biased, it's true.
So apart from PrintOps, which I'm sure has been keeping you very busy, what else is planned in terms of any new products and services and overall strategy for the company?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I mean, we do have other things going on. This is a big thing. And a lot of our development is, even if it's not directly, it's tangentially around this, standard stuff, improving our UI, continuing to improve our experience. One of the big things that we have going on right now, I mentioned earlier, we still have a very large footprint in the educational space. And the feedback we've had there is, the top of our education customers' tongues for the last several years has been, when can we move to the cloud? What's going to happen with that? And there have been a few gaps in Pharos Cloud, that requirements that educational institutions have that aren't as big of a deal in the enterprise/commercial space, mostly about how you pay for print, how you bill print, all of that. And so we launched a new product earlier this year, Pharos Cloud Education Edition, that includes some of the capabilities that begin to cover that gap. And we're going to be releasing more of those over the next several months. And so I'm excited to finally be able to offer our educational customers a path to the cloud and an option that really meets their needs in a way that is easy for them to use, easy for their students to use, and easy for the back office staff, faculty and staff to use.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, really, just out of interest, in terms of the footprint of the company, in terms of regions, when you talk about education, is that specifically in the US, or are you pretty mature in other regions as well in that space?
I would say it's mostly US. We do have a number of we do have another number of educational institutions in Europe and the Middle East, but it's mostly US. And I guess Pharos was started in New Zealand, and so we have some New Zealand and Australian institutions as well. But for the last many years, we've been more US oriented. Excited to be able to offer this more globally as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's been really interesting to hear more about the company's strategy and its heritage and how it's, continuing to innovate with PrintOps. And just to really wrap up in terms of what your views are on what's next for the print industry. Obviously, there's been actually a lot of various developments, around joint ventures with OEMs and different announcements on the OEM side. But yeah, I'd be curious as to your views as what are the key trends you think will really influence the industry in the coming year?
It's interesting because as an ISV, we're really focused on the software, and we try to be somewhat hardware agnostic. So, we pay attention, of course, because many of these OEMs are our partners and it impacts us. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on how end customers are changing, what their IT needs are, and how those are changing, and how we can better service those. But I'd say there are a few trends that it's probably somewhat you've heard them before, but obviously we have slowly declining print volumes. That's been going on for, I get the numbers say 2008 or so. I don't expect we're ever going to get to the paperless office. I hear customers, some people say, oh yeah, that's what we're aiming for. But I really believe that print is still really critical to productivity. There are lots of studies out there indicating that whether you're reading or taking notes and all of that, it's better if it's printed, it's better if it's physical. And until this mythical paperless office happens, print infrastructure is still going to be there, especially at large companies. The next thing is there's going to be ongoing digital transformation. The focus on the cloud migration is not ending. Companies are getting a little more mature and considerate in what they do and what workloads they move to the cloud, especially if they're just forklifting on-prem workloads. But it's a different thing if they're replacing their infrastructure with a SaaS solution, which is what we're advocating. Obviously, we're looking to see the emergence of PrintOps as a category with more and more companies doing that. We see one of the big trends that we're seeing in the IT space is the emergence or the ongoing emergence of what we call megaplatforms. Let's say ServiceNow or Salesforce. These platforms that are trying to do more and more for companies. A number of our largest customers are moving massive amounts of IT administration to these different platforms. It's really important for us to integrate with those. Integration of AI into all sorts of things. As we talked about earlier, we can speculate. I think that I'd be a fool to really speculate, and I laid out a use case, but I'm sure there are going to be uses of AI that I can't see today. They're probably going to launch in the next couple of months, and I'm not going to be able to, even foretell it's changing so dramatically. And there's the ever ongoing focus on security and compliance as both bad actors continue to evolve, security continues to evolve, and government regulations continue to evolve to meet those needs. And companies need to change as well, and the platforms they use to address those need to keep up. So we're going to keep seeing that. I don't know if any of these are groundbreaking, but that's what we're looking at in the future.
It's interesting you mentioned about the paperless office, because I don't know if you know when it was actually first predicted. But it was in 1975 in a Business Week article. I was just reading about it a few days ago, and it's nearly 50 years from when it was first predicted, and actually the advent of the internet actually increased print volumes. So who knows, AI may actually have the opposite effect. It may actually encourage people to print more, to disconnect from the online noise and so on. So I think, it's...
that's a good point. That's an interesting point. I think, Louella, I know this isn't even on our list of topics. I really feel like I look at print in three different types of print. You got your system print. And that could be anything from, hey, we're printing out invoices or we're printing labels to put on boxes, to convenience print, which is, someone, there's the fabled employee. I heard from a customer, an employee printed out a manual for Windows and, it costs all full color and it costs the company $800. Try to help stop that. And then I would describe it as productivity print, which is this type of print employees do that actually increases their productivity. And I would encourage companies to try to limit system print, to eliminate convenience print, as long as, some companies are actually reversing that, to make, I believe the phrase was, we want to make the commute worth it, to attract employees back into the office, and then to try to increase and encourage productivity print to improve their employees' productivity.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see how it would develop because I think there's also anecdotal evidence that Gen Z, the younger generation that are coming in are actually more likely to read hard copy books, digital book media. So, I think, like you say, things are changing so rapidly, and there's so many potential opportunities for print, but it will never disappear. And I think that's why I love doing this podcast, because it's always interesting to hear how companies are still thriving and surviving in this space and continuing to innovate. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. It's been a really fascinating conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you. Really appreciated the opportunity. It was a great joining you.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with QuoCirca. For more information, please visit quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.